Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review / rant on Doctor Who Series 7, Episode 1, Asylum of the Daleks. This episode, this can't have been the real first episode of Series 7, can it? What? This is the worst series opener since Time in the Rani in season 24, although that one might be slightly worse. Slightly. If not, then this might even be the worst episode since Warrior's Gate. Oof. Let's dive into Asylum of the Daleks. I'm not going to do the overall plot and just go through every single bit. I'm just going to flat out explain what's good and what's not good about this episode, what's bad about this episode. But the basic plot is the Doctor has been lured to Skaro by a mysterious woman who turns out to be a Dalek puppet. And it's part of a Dalek trap to capture the Doctor. They also capture companions Amy and Rory and bring them aboard the Parliament of the Dalek spaceship so that they can ask them to help them in turning off the shielding on the Dalek Asylum so the Daleks can blow up the planet, as a spaceship has crash landed on the planet, which means that if something can get in, something can get out. So the Doctor and company have to turn off the shields so the Daleks can destroy the planet. And I suppose they thinking they could probably get rid of the Doctor in some way if they possibly can, unless they can escape. The TARDIS is still on board the spaceship. Although on the planet, the Doctor and companions find that there is a survivor of the crash ship, a girl called Oswin Oswald, who is still trapped on the planet. So the Doctor has to rescue her and shut down the shield so the Daleks can destroy the Asylum, but also escape from the planet before they're destroyed and make sure they're not exterminated by the Daleks back on the ship. So the Doctor has a couple of things going for in this episode. First, he has to rescue Oswin. Second, he needs to turn off the shields and get them all off safely without being exterminated by any Daleks. And third, save Amy and Rory's marriage. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about that in a bit. Okay, let's get the positives out of the way first. First of all, Matt Smith continues to be outstanding. He is just absolutely outstanding. And unlike last story, where he delved into the more childish and wackiness side of his Doctor, this time round he's more or less all business. There is very little comedic moments in this story. Although he does have his funny moments, like with the triangle bit on the Dalek spaceship. But most of the time he's pretty serious, especially towards the end when there's a reveal, which I'll talk about later. But he's pretty serious throughout this story, and Matt Smith continues to be absolutely amazing. And to be honest, the Doctor is probably the best character of this story. I would say by default, but judging by how the other characters of this story are written, it's not really a default. It just is that the Doctor is basically the best character written in this story, and not by default. He literally is the one who's given the most care and attention to. Similarly, the acting from all across the board is brilliant. Depending on despite how the characters might be in this story, the acting from Karen Gillan, Arthur Darvill, and spoiler it, Jenna Coleman, or Jenna Louise Coleman, as she was known back then until August 2013 when she dropped to Louise when she met the Queen, as well as Nicholas Briggs as the voice of the Daleks, all continue to be brilliant, and the supporting cast that are also in this story are good for what they've got. However, as far as character-wise is concerned, the only good character in this story is the Doctor. Amy and Rory would have been, but there's a massive, massive problem with them. Again, I'll get more around to characters in a bit, but I will say the Daleks are pretty creepy at times throughout this episode. There are times, especially in the Asylum, where they can be pretty creepy. The production design is brilliant. Nick Hurren does a great job in the direction. He comes back after doing The Girl Who Waited and The God Complex last series, and those two are two brilliantly visual episodes. I believe he's directing The Angels Take Manhattan this series, not a town called Mercy. I was wrong about that, possibly. And then he'll be doing the 50th anniversary, The Day of the Doctor, and there's a very good reason why he was chosen for that. Youth Marigold's music continues to be brilliant, and I think most people have put all their heart into making this episode, as per usual. But recently the scripts have started, not all of them, but quite a few of them, especially from Stephen Moffat, have started to go downhill a bit. And now let's get down to the problems of the episode. I will say that the first couple of minutes, the pre-titles, are pretty good, apart from a few instances. So to start off, there's a couple of inconsistency concerning the Daleks. Apparently, they can feel beauty, and they feel it's offensive to kill their own kind, to kill such hatred, and that's why they've got the asylum for the Daleks that are insane. Now, whilst the idea of a Dalek asylum is interesting, the idea that the Daleks have a concept of beauty is questionable, and the fact that they consider killing other Daleks because of their high level of hatred is offensive. Now, whilst the thing about Daleks having a concept of beauty is questionable, the idea of them considering it offensive to kill other Daleks, there's been several examples across the classic and new series of Daleks just destroying each other for various reasons, whether it's because there were some Daleks were impure, maybe some Daleks were not following orders, or if it was just a punishment for other Daleks. Only 2 years earlier, 3 Daleks were destroyed after they made the Paradigm Daleks, and then they were considered inferior by the Paradigm Daleks, and they had finished their task, so they were exterminated. They were disposed of. So, and it's not. And it's not like the Daleks haven't gone to war with each other. We've had at least 2 on-screen Dalek civil wars, seen in The Evil of the Daleks, and the second one starting around Resurrection Revelation of the Daleks, and reaching its peak in Remembrance. Not to mention, like I said, sometimes Daleks have been killed by punishment reasons, as seen in Planet of the Daleks. So the fact that the Dalek Prime Minister, oh yeah, we're going to get onto that in a moment, the fact that the Daleks Prime Minister says it's offensive to kill creatures with such divine hatred contradicts the fact that the Daleks have been pretty much exterminating each other for the last 49 years, more so, or at least since the Evil of the Daleks. So, yeah, that doesn't quite work. And oh yeah, the Parliament of the Daleks. Oh, hang on a second, aren't the Daleks supposed to be fascists? They're space Nazis. I mean, you can't. There are and to be honest, they're also sort of equal because they all think that they're superior. It's just that there's some Daleks who are more superior, and then there are some Daleks who are considered inferior, and that's why we had that whole Dalek civil war back in the 80s, and the whole reason those Ironside and Time War Daleks were destroying Victory, but for the most part, the Daleks think they are pretty superior. They're not a democracy. They're not supposed to have a parliament. They're a fascist regime. They're space Nazis. They're supposed to think everything else is inferior. That was the whole point of the Daleks when they were made. Oh yeah, and Doctor Who was never political before 2017. Shut up! Doctor Who was political before 2017. Why do I have to keep telling you that? That is a basic fact that some people keep trying to ignore. And it seems like Stephen Moffat forgot that as well, because, well, at least for the Daleks being Nazi allegories, because a Dalek parliament with a Dalek prime minister. But Terry Nation wrote them to be Nazi allegories. They're space Nazis. It was bad enough Douglas Adams turning them into another race of robots back in 1979, but now, at least then they kept at least then they still had the concept of Dalek ideology. Here, it's just, I mean, they still act like Daleks, but the idea of a Dalek parliament with a prime minister, that kind of takes the idea away that they're space fascists. They're just evil. They're just evil cyborgs now. They're not that interesting. In fact, this story, really, apart from when they're being creepy, the Daleks aren't that interesting in this story. Despite Nicholas Briggs being absolutely fucking outstanding, as per always, especially as that Dalek Prime Minister, why didn't they just make him the Emperor? Just make it the Emperor, and this is like the Emperor's. You know, you can still have a conference room. No, fascists can have conference rooms. This could be their big conference room, and the Emperor Dalek has ordered the Doctor to be brought on board. But nope, Dalek Parliament. If the Daleks actually had turned good and turned to democracy, in an interesting story, by the way, then yeah, but they've not turned good. They're the usual Daleks, so they shouldn't have a parliament. It doesn't make sense. Also, whilst we're at it, the Dalek Asylum shields are on the planet. But that's basically. I'm gonna reference Mr. TARDIS Review's 2012 review and his 2019 Dalek December review of this story quite a bit in this review. But basically, the idea of giving the access codes to turn off the shield to the Dalek Asylum is on the Asylum itself. If the Daleks can't access it, they can't even send a small task force down to the planet to turn it off because they're so scared of the inmates. But yet, they give the metaphoric key to the Daleks' own the same Daleks' own cells with the whole key code. If they have to go onto the planet to turn it off, you may as well not bother with the shields. The Daleks don't seem to be leaving the planet anytime soon, despite the Alaska, the spaceship that's crashed, having already crashed onto the planet a year earlier. And by the way, it's a year since it crashed. What's taken the Daleks so long? Did it really take them a year to recruit the Doctor and company? Did it really do a year before coming up with a plan? Maybe if they used that time travel technology from Resurrection of the Daleks to swipe the TARDIS during mid-flight, they might have saved themselves a whole lot of trouble. It was but one trap! Yeah, I'm sure. But that's a Resurrection of the Daleks reference, not an Asylum one. But yeah, it doesn't make sense. They have the code on the planet. You have to turn it off from the planet itself. But that's like giving inmates the key to their own cells. Furthermore, they take a year to actually do anything about it. A year before there's any potential threat. The Daleks haven't left the planet yet, but now they're all of a sudden, the insane ones, but now the ones on the spaceship are now all of a sudden scared that they're going to escape. But it's been a year since the spaceship crashed. That doesn't make sense. Right. So yeah, that's the bad stuff at the start. And Amy and Rory's divorce. Ugh. Prepare for me to rip into that when we get to that. But first, let's talk about something a bit more positive. Let's talk about Oswin Oswald, the obnoxious Alaska navigator slash Cleverclogs character played by Jenna Coleman. Oh boy, Oswin Oswald is so obnoxious, and she's cocky and witty, but kind of obnoxious. I don't know if that was the intention, or if Stephen Moffat just went a bit too overboard with the cockiness, or Jenna Coleman and director Nick Hurren went a bit overboard with it in the performance-wise. But Oswin's so cocky and so obnoxious. It would be really... she would be a very intolerable character if it wasn't for the fact that Jenna Coleman does such a great job in the role. Jenna Coleman has a great performance, but the character is just so obnoxious. It's just lucky. It's because of Jenna Coleman, and a couple of good lines is that Oswin, you do want the Doctor to rescue Oswin. But sadly, her obnoxiousness makes us care about her less. Maybe if she became a full-time companion from this episode onwards, and she developed over time as part of a character arc, that would have made sense. But Oswin's a one-time only character, or is she? Technically, when we find out what's going on about her, and I'll get onto that in a bit, yes, but technically yes, but also sort of not really. Oh yeah, and it's because and what I meant by, we'll get onto that in a bit, because Oswin is played by Jenna Coleman, who's going to play companion Clara in the 2012 Christmas special, The Snowmen. So the two are very similar to each other. So there's something going on there, and it will turn out that there is something going on. I'll get onto that when we get further into Series 7, because that's the whole story arc for Series 7 Part 2. So I'll get onto that when we get to the Snowmen in Series 7 Part 2. We've got Series 7 Part 1 to deal with first. We've got to say goodbye to the pond, and I'll get onto them in a bit. But yeah, Oswin's such a massive, obnoxious character. It's just lucky. It's just a good thing we got Jenna Coleman to play the character. Otherwise, she would be intolerable. Also, I have to say, Jenna Coleman is pretty damn hot, isn't she? And I'm not making a joke here. I'm being dead serious. Right. The Dalek puppets. I want to talk about these first before I get on to Amy and Rory. The Dalek puppets. Dalek servants. Literally no reason to have them. Literally, I mean, you can have servants for the Daleks, fair enough. We've had mercenaries in Resurrection of the Daleks, and we've had a couple of other people work for the Daleks before, and these guys could technically work for the Daleks, but there's not really much of a reason to have these guys, particularly they're really really for this story and for the time of the Doctor, and then they're never used again. It's not really worth it. There was this one bit I used to really dislike where the Doctor's talking to one of them. I think it's Darla, and he's talking about how she has a daughter in a Dalek concentration camp, and then she's not really that caring because she's under Dalek influence, and she's more pointing her arm in the direction of the Dalek Prime Minister who wants to talk to the Doctor. I didn't really like that. She didn't because of the Dalek influence. She doesn't really care. She's not even caring about her own daughter. More like she just doesn't care about the what's going on at all. To be honest, she just sounds uninterested in what the Doctor wants to say to her, and is more interested in him listening to the Dalek Prime Minister. Although on the rewatch, it does sort of make sense because it could be implied that she's dead, and the Dalek puppetry. Because of the nanocloud on the Dalek Asylum, as well as however they get to do it off the Asylum, they made them their puppets, and they're supposedly dead by this point. They've been turned into Dalek puppets, but it's implied that they're dead. That makes sense. But I don't think it's specifically stated that they have to be dead, or at least or that they died when they were turned into a puppet. So that is something to be notable to note. And there's these on the surface. There's the rest of the Alaska crew who have been turned into who are dead, and they have been turned into Dalek puppets, living all dead. And this includes Harvey, who somehow he died in the cold, and he preserved his body, but somehow he's awake by the time the Doctor and Amy land on the surface. Rory goes into the actual planet and lands in one of the cell areas. But Harvey is supposedly alive, and then it turns out he died. So how did he wake up then? Did the arrival of the 3 new arrivals just somehow waking up, and he just went back to what he thought he was doing? But yeah, the Dalek puppets. He's now a Dalek puppet, and so are the skeletons of his crew members. And they kind of are a bit pointless. There is a really good bit where the Doctor kicks one of them when he's jumping over one of the seats, and he kicks one out of the way. But apart from that, then and some slight creepy value, that they're not really that necessary. Oh, and also to take off Amy's wrist thing that prevents her from being turned into a Dalek puppet by the nano things in the air, and it causes her to have hallucinations, which aren't really that necessary. Although a nice touch of the girl, the ballet dancer girl, being like the one from Oswin's cabin. But yeah, there wasn't really much point to that. Oh yeah, because of the whole Amy Rory marriage subplot. Okay, it's time. It's time to talk about the worst thing of this story. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Amy and Rory. What the fuck happened to Amy and Rory in this story? Apart from the great performances by Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill, Amy and Rory in this story are absolutely destroyed. What happened? Apparently, Amy and Rory had an argument, and now they're getting a divorce. And as I addressed in Pond Life, apparently 1 month after the events of the last episode of Pond Life, which takes place in August of a year. So unless this is supposedly September, or implied to be September perhaps, by the way that Pond Life was structured to be April, May, June, July, August of 1 year, it's implied this could be September because this episode was being broadcast in September 2012. So it's implied that these were the months leading up to September of that year when they were getting their divorce. Except, as Mr. TARDIS review says, it takes about 6 to 7 months to actually get a divorce. That's why that's why Henry VIII was married to Anne of Cleves for 6 months. He wanted to get divorced from her more or less. He didn't want to marry her as soon as he saw her in the flesh, but he had to go through the wedding, so he organised the divorce to happen more or less afterwards, but they still had to be married for 6 months. So it takes at least half a year to get divorced, unless this episode takes place a year and about 13 months after the events of Pond Life. Unless it's just over a year, then yeah, Amy and Rory just suddenly got a divorce, and apparently the whole reason that they're getting a divorce is because Amy can't have children. I'm not even I'm not even having a moment of blooperism where I've stopped talking because I'm out of breath or haven't got anything to say. I'm doing this on purpose. I'm literally pausing to give a reaction. Basically, what happened is that, according to Amy, they did something to her at Demon's Run so that she couldn't have any more children after giving birth to Melody Pond, aka River Song. But that was never, ever explained prior to this episode. Heck, it's even it's forced. It's a forced way to have Amy and Rory split up for no reason. They didn't need to split up, and they get back together at the end. I'll get back to that later because we've got to get there first. Seeing Stephen Moffat, I can procrastinate as well, but it doesn't make sense. They never said in Series 6 ever that Amy could not have any more children because they did something to her at Demon's Run following the birth of Melody. And even then, even if that was the case, you didn't think of adoption or fostering. Or there was this thing in the news a few years ago where the sperm of the father and the egg of a mother can be implanted into another woman, and she'd give birth to that child, to the child for them, and they just have to change the birth certificates. Okay, maybe maybe Amy's eggs wouldn't work because of the whole Demon's Run stuff, and maybe IVF wouldn't work either. But there's you're not out of options, and even if you couldn't give it to an egg donor, perhaps you've got sperm donors. So even if you don't have an egg donor and another woman to give birth to the child, or test tube, because you can have test tube babies, even then you can still adopt and foster. They do that in the Minnesota PS. They adopt a boy in 1930s New York. We'll get to that. We'll get to the Angels Take Manhattan, and I'll address PS in one of the 11th Doctor Minnesota videos. But they're able to adopt in the 1930s. So what was wrong with adoption in the 2010s? It's not like you had no other options, adopting or fostering. I know the argument of Melody Pond having already been their daughter is an argument, but I would say because they sort of raised her, or at least that's what they said in the episode, Let's Kill Hitler. They raised Melody Pond, although more like a best friend rather than a daughter, as I think I addressed there in that review. But yeah, I mean, I heard the argument that Melody Pond is he used to say, you've already got a child, but I know Rory wants more children. It's not the fact that they don't count River Song, Melody Pond, it's the fact that they wanted to have more, and they'd already lost that one. They'd already lost that one, but they wanted to have more, and they wanted to be proper parents or something, perhaps. But yeah, but at least they still have the one, obviously. But I guess they wanted more kids, obviously. But yeah, and after what happened last time, they wanted to raise these ones this time. But now Amy can't have any more kids. I don't know why the Silence wouldn't want her to have any more kids. They've got the one they wanted. What does it matter if she has any more? So Amy and Rory can't have any kids anymore, and they don't consider adoption or fostering or any other option. So they have a massive argument about it, and Rory is kicked out by Amy, or as she says, she gave him up. But still, you didn't discuss it. And like I said, it might have just been a month for them ready to divorce. Just a month. That is too soon, and they didn't discuss it in that time. And if it was 13 months, well, that's even worse. If it's 6 to 7, or worse, 12 to 13 months, it's even worse that they didn't discuss it. These two don't seem to want to get back together, considering all of the stuff that they went through in series 5 and 6. With Rory even brings it up that he spent 2,000 years, or almost 2,000 years, protecting Amy in the Pandorica, and that he still loves her. and he knows that he loves her more than she loves him. But even after all that, they still didn't talk in the time they had. It's only once the Doctor leaves them alone and he suspects Rory is going to give Amy his wristband, so she would then be protected, and he would be the one who gets turned into the puppet. But it would take longer for him because of his love for Amy. But then, so the Doctor puts his own one on Amy, presuming he doesn't need it. He's fine, he's a Time Lord. So he puts his strap onto Amy, and then he leaves them to sort it out. Yet they didn't sort it out in the first month to 13 months that they could have had. It's not like they want to get back together, and throughout the episode they've been kind of making bitchy and sly remarks to each other. They don't seem to want to get back together. It's only once they realise the Doctor has kind of tricked them, is that they realise, oh yeah, we do love each other. These characters have been ruined beyond the point of no return. No, the point of no return was that bit when Amy slapped Rory, and the second time in the episode. And this time, unlike the slapping of Amy and River to Rory and the Doctor, or Clara and the Doctor in Series 8, unlike those instances where it's played as a joke, and the same in the Russell T Davies era with Jackie and Francine slapping the Doctor, and Minnie touching his body at the down below as well. All of those times were all played for jokes. Well, maybe not so much the Clara slapping the Doctor into the Dalek, but that time you could argue that he may have been hoping that the Dalek was still bad. That's an argument we'll get to when we get to that story, perhaps. But this time, when Amy slaps Rory, the second time in this episode, when he tells her he loves her more than she loves him, and the whole stuff about the Pandorica, and she's pissed off about that. This time, when she slaps him that time, that's it. There's no hope for these two left. I don't care there's 4 more episodes left. They don't even develop the fact that they're getting back together, or that or they've started falling apart from each other, or they're falling apart then get back together throughout Series 7 Part 1. It's just this episode, and then the rest of the series is business as usual until the last episode, where Amy makes her final choice twice. More on that when we get to those. But considering what happens here, this is the point of no return for the relationship. This is it. These characters in less than 1 episode, plus the end of the minisode from before, are ruined. That's it. No hope. I don't care what the other 4 episodes have left. I mean, they have a lovely relationship in the last 4 episodes, but after this one, there is no hope. There is no point of... This is the point of no return. And we have gone far beyond the point of no return. Okay, let's get on to the positive things. Let's some more positivity before I break something. The Daleks. Again, the Daleks aren't interesting in this story, apart from when they're being creepy. That brings me into a fact I forgot about Altman. Apparently, she claimed she was going through a phase when she fancied a girl, which, bisexuality and LGBTism, they're not phases. I'm not the best expert about these topics, but I can assure you that such things are not phases. In fact, I'm informed they're not even choices. I'm informed they're not choices. So, yeah, you're trying to be funny, Stephen Moffat, but it's coming across as just a no. Just no. No. You're not helping. No. Bad Stephen Moffat. Bad Stephen Moffat. Like I said, I'm not an expert on these topics, but I've got friends like Matt Moyer from the Universals who are experts or know a lot about this topic. So, yeah, so I'm informed through Matt and other people that these are not choices, let alone phases. And so to say it's a phase is no. Just no. I can do a David Tennant impression if you want me to repeat the word. No! That was a bad one, sorry. But, just, no. And then we get to intensive care, where apparently the Daleks all there are ones that have faced the Doctor in the classic series. They met him on planets that appeared in classic series story. We meet Daleks from Spiridon, from Planet of the Daleks, Iridius from the Chase, Kemble from the Daleks Master Plan, Vulcan from Power of the Daleks, Exelon from Death to the Daleks. I think that's about it. I only said Spiridon first because I know that was the first ones that was actually said. But the rest of them, I think, were not necessarily in that order. Those were the orders of the story broadcast, with Planet coming just before Death. So yeah, we've got 5 Dalek stories from the first, second, and third Doctor stories. But yeah, the Daleks that we see here are all new series Daleks. In fact, most of the Daleks we see in the Asylum are new series Bronze Daleks. Only the occasional Dalek exception, like the Evil of the Daleks, Dalek Guard, the Special Weapons Dalek, a Dalek Sec, that Supreme Paradigm Dalek from We're Waiting Over a Song, which I commented in the last review about how that was a Supreme Dalek and that was there and now it's turned up here and yet there's another Supreme Dalek on the spaceship. And like, what? There's only supposed to be one of them, unless the other one got destroyed, in which case another one's replaced it. Unless that's what happened. It should have been the drone. It should have been a drone, a scientist, a strategist, or the Eternal. At least that would make sense for why the Eternal's not here. And there's no scientist either, by the way. So there's a couple of strategists, a couple of drones, but it's mostly gold, bronze Daleks on the Time War spaceship. The Paradigm Daleks have gotten a nicer, darker chrome colour scheme, but because they don't appear after this episode again in the TV series, it's pretty pointless. And considering we've got they've got all the bronze Daleks there, it's even more pointless. And then it's the Bronze Time War Daleks in the Asylum, bar the exceptions I mentioned. Oh, and a few original first the Daleks from the Daleks, or the Dead Planet Daleks, as they're known, because that's another name for the Dalek story, the original story. But some of the original Daleks from that story. But yeah, apparently they were supposed to be bringing out all the stops on these Daleks. They were supposed to be bringing out lots of returning Daleks. There was an article in the Sun apparently that they would bring back a gold Dalek from Day of the Daleks and Frontier in Space, and that Dalek never showed up. Then again, the Sun has been known for making up porcupines, but there aren't, and there's a Dalek from Resurrection of the Daleks apparently in the poster, but apart from a few classic Daleks and that other Supreme Dalek from Wedding, there is really very few other Dalek designs. It's mostly bronze Time War Daleks plus a Dalek Sec variant. So, which could be argued to be the bronze Daleks version of a Task Force Leader, which is what those gold Daleks from Day were. But yeah, they don't really bring out all the stops. And then when we get to Intensive Care, they're all the same design anyway. So, moving on towards the end of the story, the Doctor discovers that Oswin has in fact been turned into a Dalek. Not just a Dalek puppet, but the entire full conversion, which sounds more like a thing the Cybermen would do. But this time the Daleks decide, because she's a genius, they decide to turn her into a Dalek and encase her in her own cell and then chain her up. And Oswin's been living her life thinking she's still on the spaceship. This is because the Doctor's wondering where she got all the eggs and the milk from. By the way, a creepy bit from earlier on that does work, is pretty good, is when the Dalek does try to say eggs. Rory thinks they're talking about the sensor globes, but it turns out it's trying to say exterminate. So that was a good moment in the episode. And the bit where the Doctor finds out that Oswin is a Dalek, that's another great bit. That I'll say, that is a great bit. And Matt Smith, that bit when he finds out Oswin is a Dalek, he is disgusted. He is disgusted by what the Daleks have done to her, and disgusted and sorry at the same time, as well as some slights of fear as well. Just absolutely magnificent performance from Matt Smith throughout the entire episode, but that bit especially. Eventually, Oswin from inside takes down the shields, and also before that, she erased the memory of the Doctor from the Dalek memory web, which is not a hive mind, but this kind of mind web that they're all connected to. I think the Cybermen have one as well, as it will be explained later. Hang on a second, that was the cure for the Dalek, or at least for the intensive care Daleks, for their insanity. That was their cure. You mean you had the cure right there at the asylum? And eventually the Doctor manages to teleport her now back together Amy and Rory, who are now snogging each other's faces off. Oh yeah, now you're snogging each other's faces off. Like you didn't have like 1 to 13 months already to talk about this, and you've only just done it because the Doctor's tricked you. He didn't have. I mean, I'm glad the Doctor fixed the relationship, but he shouldn't have been the one to fix it. They should have fixed it themselves in a normal human fashion, not having to be taken to this sci-fi location with sci-fi threats and having their half-human, half-Time Lord son-in-law sort of fix everything. And yes, he is half-human. The TV movie confirms it. Depending on what happens with the Timeless Children thing. Oh, I'm not going to go all into that again. Oh, let's just focus on this episode and what it does wrong. Okay, just... Okay. They teleport back to the TARDIS, so they're able to teleport inside the TARDIS. Okay, I'll give them that. It's at least they don't get exterminated on the spot. But it turns out Oswin has erased the memory of the Doctor from all of the Daleks. The turd on the icing turd on this shit cake is this ending. The Daleks now don't know who the Doctor is. Nearly 49 years of this relationship. I mean, fair enough you want to do a reboot, but do something with it. This just leaves it on a cliffhanger. And the next time we see the Daleks is the day of the Doctor, so they're fighting the Time War, so of course they're not going to know who the Doctor is. And then the time after that is the time of the Doctor, and they get their memories back, thanks to Tasha Lem. Then the time after that is into the Dalek, and the 12th Doctor thinks they shouldn't know him, either because of this, or because he's regenerated, or both. And then when we get to the Series 9 opener, The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar, they know who the Doctor is again. No exceptions. Probably because Davros is there. But, yeah. So, the next couple of times we're going to see the Daleks, we're going back and forth between whether they know the Doctor, and we don't really get a proper conclusion to this. The best we get is the Daleks got their memories back thanks to Tasha Lem in the time of the Doctor, and any who didn't have it after that got it from Davros, probably. So, yeah, you know what? Say what you like about Chris Chibnall and his era, but he fixed the Daleks after Stephen Moffat ruined them. Because after this, the Daleks are pretty much ruined. I mean, there's going to be worse things to happen to them as well throughout this era, but say what you like about Chibnall, but he managed to fix the Daleks after what they went through in this era. What went wrong? How did this go wrong? This shouldn't have happened. It's fine to erase the memories of the Daleks in intensive care, even though that should have been what the other Daleks should have done in the first place, because that's the cure for their condition. Oh, and apparently the one Dalek, there was only one Dalek on Iridius in the chase that actually met the Doctor on that planet. Are we saying that that Dalek that fell into that pit was the one that is here, or did some of the Daleks who went on the chase followed the Doctor on the chase and landed elsewhere come here? I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, and probably some of the others as well. Probably, in fact, the ones from Exelon blew up, and so did the Power, the ones on Vulcan. Apart from that one that's supposedly still alive, at least the version in the 2016/20 animated version. Say that one just about survived, a bit like the Cybermats did at the end of the Tomb of the Cybermen, but yeah, but the rest of them blew up. The only story that I suppose, and Master Plan, yeah, they died in a thanks to the time thing. What was it called? Time Destructor. I think the only story that actually works to having Dalek survivors is Planet. I wonder if that Supreme Council Dalek is what amongst them. No, I didn't really meet the Doctor that much, did it? But yeah. But anyway, that aside, but now Oswin, or Dalek Oswin, has wiped the memories of the Doctor from the whole Dalek core, at least until the time after next time we meet them. So now the Daleks are trying to kill someone who they don't know, as one of them goes exterminators, the Doctor's leaving, and they don't know who he is, and they ask Doctor Who, and this question is going to be overused. It's the first question, and I like its usage, but in Series 7 it kind of gets overused, because it's some sort of I don't know, because it's the first question, so yeah, Stephen Moffat likes them to ask it, and the Doctor just finds it funny all of a sudden, because he's not on Trenzalore yet. You're fucking joking. Okay. Okay. Asylum of the Daleks is awful. This is an awful story. Okay, positive. Like I said, positives: acting, direction, cinematography, sets, music, editing for the most parts. Um, and yeah, that's basically about it. But negatives: the story sucks. Characters are botched. Amy and Rory are just ruined. Any love for them throughout series 5 and 6 we've got for them is ruined. And whatever they're like in the next 4 episodes, this is the point of no return for their relationship. And it sucks. Oswin is obnoxious and annoying. If it wasn't for Jenna Coleman, I wouldn't like her at all. The Daleks are ruined. The Doctor Dalek relationship is ruined by the end, and the stuff that they do with the Daleks isn't interesting at all throughout the story, apart from when they're being creepy. But even then, that's not much. That's not often. Dalek puppets aren't necessary. Yeah, and just the script is just absolutely awful. This should have had a few more rewrites, at least to knock out some of the plot holes, at least to get rid of some stupid plot holes that weren't needed, that weren't there. Like I said at the start, this can't have been the real first episode of this series. This can't have been. It's worse when you think about it as well, because it's bad when you watch it, because some things you will notice on rewatches that things don't quite make sense. Sometimes, maybe even on a first viewing, perhaps. But certainly, when you stop to think about it, it sucks even more, and it just ruins so much. This story sucks, and I am not ashamed to give Asylum of the Daleks a 3 out of 10. It gets a 3 because it's not a drag to sit through. It's not boring. There are some good elements, but most of it's shit. So, yeah. Most of it's shit. There are some good stuff, but most of it's shit. How did this episode get so much praise when it came out? I mean, fair enough if the critics don't know about the continuity, but at least they can pick up on the plot holes, and if they've been watching the series for the last 2 years, they know about the Dr. Amy Rory relationship. They must at least have some. Well, that was the big criticism, Amy and Rory's divorce thing. I'm glad that was the one that got noted the most, because that is the biggest problem of this story. But I'm still surprised this story got critically acclaimed when it came out. Only in the last couple of years have people actually been coming out and saying it's a bad episode. Not just for the Amy Rory divorce subplot, but although that is a major factor to it, possibly the major factor to it. But still, at least we're trying to be honest with ourselves now. So, yeah, for all the false stories prior to this in the new series have had, they never went this low yet. This is the lowest we've got to so far in the new series. It's the lowest since Time to Run. It might even I think Time to Run is slightly worse because that one's dull and boring, and there's less effort into that and less of a story. So I think this is the worst story since then. Definitely the worst series opener since then. But it was definitely in competition. Definitely very, very strong competition. So, yeah. Congratulations, Asylum of the Daleks. You deserve a toast for being the worst episode of Doctor Who of the new series at time of broadcast. There is still worse to come, believe it or not. But at this point in time, you are the worst story of the new series, and you are the worst story since Time in Irani. Cheers. Fuck you. I think I know what my least favourite story of Series 7 is going to be. This. Well, we'll see for confirmation, but don't be fucking surprised if this comes number 15th on a 15-story ranking. I'm ranking all the stories from Doctor Wither and the Wardrobe to name the Doctor. The 2013 ones will get their own mini ranking. But, yeah, out of the 15 stories in the Series 7 ranking, don't be surprised if this comes 15th and last. So, yeah. that's it from me. Thank you for watching this very long rant/review. Hope you liked it. Because it's a long one. I'll see you guys next time for the superior Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, written by Chris Chibnall. And you know what? Again, say what you like about his era, but after this story, he's exactly what the Doctor needs. So, yeah. Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, that's next. That's superior to this story. That's a fun one. We're going to get onto that next time. See you tomorrow. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review. Excuse me. And that's basically the plot, although things get complicated. So the Doctor has quite a few things to do. First, turn off the shields of the planet. Second, rescue. But let's get the good things out of the way first. First of all, Matt Smith continues to be fucking awesome. Okay, let's get the positives out of the way first. Firstly, Matt Smith continues to be possibly what. And spoiler alert: Jenna Louise Coleman or Jenna Coleman. The Daleks, whilst they sometimes they're at their Dalekiness, and sometimes they can be very creepy. Again, I'll get more into character reason, but as always, the script seemed to be the main problem all of a sudden. And the fact that they consider killing high level such creatures of. Whilst the beauty thing is questionable, especially following, some Daleks would just, so, there's not really an excuse for saying that Daleks don't, despite Nicholas Briggs's excellent and outstanding, but Oswin will be a one-time only story companion. Also, I have to say, Jenna Coleman is absolutely beautiful. She's pretty hot, isn't she? Not even caring. She's just not bothered to really. She sounds pretty bored in places. Okay, let's get back to talking before editing me thinks I'm actually doing this. I should know better, but you never know. And I know, and you'll probably think, scratch that last little bit there. Okay, so, but I guess they wanted more, and now Rory, but I guess they wanted more. And this time, it was not played as a joke, like the slapping of Amy and Rory. I don't even think they're called. Like I said, I'm not an expert on the topic of Like I said, I'm not the best expert on the and having their sci-fi alien